but I do have a couple of questions. Did your sister smoke?
Like a chimney. She was always smoking those Westminsters. I could never stand the smell of cigarette smoke myself. That was one excuse I had for staying away.
There were 2 brands of cigarette butts that I found in her house. Now, assuming that the Westminsters were Susan's, I wonder who the second brand belonged to.
I haven't the foggiest idea.
I was also wondering about the deal to sell her property to William Forrest. Do you remember when exactly she changed her mind?
Just a few days before she disappeared. I remember she sent me a letter about it. I'm sure I have it around here somewhere.
Vern, I found this picture of your sister.
Oh, I forgot. It came with the letter Susan sent me.
She's standing in front of her bookcases in her living room. Who do you suppose took it?
Well, since she rarely let other people take a picture, I bet she took it herself. Photography was one of her hobbies.
If that's the case, Susan might be trying to tell us something. I should have another look around her house. Based on that photo, it looks like Susan was standing here in the living room over by those bookshelves. I'll have all this film delivered to Vern's hardware. I hope that Vern will be able to recognize something in the photos. Vern, did the photos happen to arrive yet?
They did, but a customer left the door open and the wind scattered them everywhere.
Oh dear. Let me help you gather them up. The date stamp shows that this was taken just a few days before your sister disappeared.
See the way she's standing? It's like she's pointing down at something.
Yes, but there's nothing in the foreground to indicate what she's pointing at. About the fireplace. It's not bricked up in the photo, but it is now. When exactly was that done?
I don't recall. Susan never used the fireplace. She was tight with money, and she always said that too much heat was lost up the chimney with fireplaces.
So she bricked it up to fight the draft?
That's what I assumed.
Since the fireplace isn't bricked up in the photo, and Susan disappeared just a few days later, it's likely it was bricked up at or after the time of her disappearance. Sheriff, I'm dreadfully afraid I know what we'll find when we break down those bricks.
Oh my God!
It's impossible to say who it is, but the smart money's on Susan Gander.
So she never did leave town. She's been in here the whole time.
I'm afraid so, Vern.
There's damage to the skull. Looks like blunt force trauma. We got ourselves a crime scene now.
Hey, it's fine with me. As soon as the ink's dry on the contract, you can take out whatever you want. The furniture, building materials, everything.
I can't even guess at the value of all that. The chandelier is probably worth a couple grand all by itself.
Do you already have someone interested in this stuff?
A contractor down in Portland already offered to buy whatever I can recover before you tear it down.
Well, you're both welcome to it.
What are you doing with the land?
I've got plans for some high-end condos. They'll sell like hotcakes. I'm in it pretty deep now, but I figure I'll have my investment back in less than 2 years.
To our good fortune.
The date stamp on the videotape shows it was recorded 6 days before Susan disappeared.
I doubt that William was aware that Susan was taping his conversation with Chris.
Yeah, but he's about to find out all about it.
Sheriff, Jessica, what can I do for you?
We found Susan Gander's body, William, bricked up in the fireplace in her home.
That's interesting, but why are you telling me this?
Because we also know that Susan videotaped you conspiring with Chris Lamar, and maybe that has something to do with how she ended up in that fireplace.
There is nothing illegal about making an informal agreement in anticipation of a property sale.
There is if you do something illegal to make that informal agreement happen.
That tape provides a pretty convincing motive for murder, Mr. Forrest. You told Chris you were in pretty deep when Susan backed out of selling her house. It must have been a serious setback for you.
Oh, I didn't actually have much invested in the project. I just said that to Chris so he'd stop competing with me to get the property for himself. I didn't want to get into a bidding war and drive up the price. Besides, I have plenty of lucrative projects in the works now. Chris Lamar, on the other hand...
What about Chris?
He really needed the money he could have gotten for selling the materials from Susan's house. His antiques business has been struggling ever since the deal fell apart.
That candlestick looks very familiar, William. May I ask where it came from?
I bought it from Chris's antique shop.
It looks just like the ones in the photograph of Susan's mantelpiece.
We're gonna need to borrow it.
Be my guest.
If Chris sold the candlestick to William, how did Chris come to have it in the first place?
Let's have a chat with him and ask him now.
Chris, I don't know if you've heard, but Susan Gander's body has been found.
After all this time? Where was it?
Bricked up in her fireplace. She obviously never left home.
Well, at least now Vern can have some closure. I'm really sorry, but I just don't have time to chat. I need to clear my shelves for a new shipment arriving.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to lend a hand.
Mr. Lamar, is it true that you made an agreement with William Forrest to harvest materials from Susan's house once it was sold?
I vaguely remember a conversation like that.
And according to Mr. Forrest, business hasn't been so good for you since that deal fell through.
It's true that my business selling historic building materials is all but gone, but I've been able to ride things out by selling knickknacks to tourists.
Susan's decision to cancel the sale really hurt your bottom line. Revenge sounds like a possible motive for murder to me.
I had absolutely nothing to do with Susan's murder. Ever since she disappeared, the house has been in legal limbo. I would have had a better chance of eventually cashing in on the materials if she'd remained alive.
Did you ever sell a silver candlestick to William?
I believe so. It was part of a pair that someone sold me a couple of years back.
Do you remember who that was?
No, but I could probably sort through my files and find out.
Do you recall seeing anyone coming and going on a regular